Hello and welcome to our latest conversation where we have Tabatha. Oh goodness, is it Thorell or Thorell? I didn't even
Thorell.
confirm with you.
That's okay. Thorell. Yep.
Thorell, perfect. And we are talking about leadership. Now, why are we talking about leadership? Well, because in the month of February, one of our themes at Parent Twin Connection has been leadership. The other two are relationships and communication, and then healthy eating and nutrition. So stay tuned for some of our other workshops this week in those arenas. But when Tabitha first reached out to us to say, hey, I've got some cool stuff I'd like to share about leadership, I knew I wanted to have her on because, as she put it, she takes a little bit of a different perspective to leadership. And I think a lot of folks as adults, we don't see ourselves as leaders of the next generation, but really truly we are. And I think it's an important distinction that I make with a lot of families is we can't control the next generation, but we can certainly influence them. And so I think that's where a lot of leadership comes in. So Tabatha, take a minute, give us a quick background about who you are and why leadership is so important to you. And then we're going to chat about how leadership starts with us individually.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Clarissa, for having me first and foremost. Yeah, I'm an author, speaker, coach, podcaster, and investor. I started real estate investing with my husband almost 2 decades ago. I'm going to date myself here. I started when I was 5, right?
Right.
No, we started in college because we knew what real estate could do for our future, for our family's future. We knew we wanted to get married and have kids, and we didn't want to be reliant on like the government. And my husband had watched his dad buy some real estate, and he'd helped his dad develop it. He property managed it, renovated some of his projects and stuff. So he's like, I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, I want to make things pretty. So like we renovated, and my husband lived in the basement and we rented out the top. And it was just a great way for us to see financial future and leading our own selves for our future selves. Like we saw that really early on. I knew that I wanted to help people. I had a degree in marriage and family studies. I wanted to help cultivate relationships and communication. And I loved all of those things. And over the course of our marriage, which has been over 16 years, we have done that. Like we started businesses. We were in a direct selling company. My husband, by trade, is a farmer, and he loves doing that. But really where I talk most about leadership is as a mom, because I'm a mom to 5 beautiful girls. And if you are a parent, you're a leader. Like whether you want to or not, you are a leader, because they do what you do, not what you say. And so we have to, as parents, realize our leadership role. And even if that's just what you are, I hate that term, but if you don't have a career outside of the home, leadership is still number one, because you want to lead your kids or influence them in a way where they have a beautiful life, right? I think all parents can say that we want our kids to have a beautiful life. And in order to do that, we have to lead them. And first and foremost, we have to lead ourselves. And that's where I've had trainings with John Maxwell. When we were in our direct selling company, the company we were in was amazing for leadership. And so we've dove into, a lot of different areas. I've never been like a leader of a corporation, but I've definitely done research and knowledge-based things where people have done that. And so just taking just a little shift and a little different perspective on how we can shift leadership for the future, because I think leadership has always had this weird connotation. And I actually just did a leadership podcast on Friday, and it was kind of like management versus leadership and all those nuances in between. And really, like I said, leadership really does start with us, no matter what your other titles are.
Right. So I'm just going to double check. Is my audio coming through? I know my video is lagging a little bit.
Your audio's good. The video is a little slow, but the audio's good.
All right. You don't need to see me. We just need to hear me. Maybe you don't even need to hear that. But so to that point of being a leader with kids, there are times that I say to parents, like, unfortunately, especially once we get into the teenage years, you have the distinct disadvantage of the name mom or dad, because as the kids are individuating and identifying who they are as people, it is developmentally appropriate for them to push away and to say, no, I'm going to do it my way. to heck with whatever mom or dad has to say. So, one of the points that you emphasize is that kids will model what we do, not
Mhm.
what we say. And man, do I ever remember hearing do as I say, not as I do, when in fact the exact opposite is true.
Right. Well, just as human beings, that's what we do. We naturally see something and we want, like, if we are pulled towards it, we want to model it. If we
Mhm,
are repelled against it, then we're going to do everything the opposite, the rebellion kind of way. And so,
mhm,
parenting, because we're talking about parenting here, when you lead or dictate, which is what a lot of parents unfortunately do, and I'm totally pointing the finger here, right? Like when we dictate, the kids want to repel away from that. And so
mhm,
it doesn't matter what we say. I think this is like, you remember 7% of what somebody actually says, or I mean, even it
mhm.
could be even less than that. So kids are obviously less than that. Your kids are going to hear like 3% of what you say,
Right.
but it's how you make them feel. And that's the leadership role. Because when you lead, it's about how you can make the other person feel compelled to do something, to take an action. And as parents, we want that for our kids because we want them to act in a certain way, not meaning like act perfect, but do things so that their life isn't necessarily, I'm never about making my kids' life easier, but I want them to have that experience in a way that's less traumatizing and in a
Mhm.
way that can be learning and growing so that they can internalize it, deal with the emotion of it, and
Right.
then go beyond. Well, if I want that for them, then I need to be able to do that for them. Because if I am reacting short tempered every time everything happens, and then my kids are doing the same thing and I'm snapping at them for doing that, where do you think that root cause? Where is that coming from?
Absolutely. Well, and that was what I was thinking as we were going through is, we're talking about like what we say only matters 3 to 7%, right? 7% if their brains are actually fully developed and we
Right.
actually have their attention like adults, which
Right.
we don't have with the kids. And it's all fine and well to say, okay, we need to demonstrate certain things to them and behave in certain manners, but clearly we have to lead ourselves
Yep.
before we can lead anybody else. So let's go back to basics on that. Like, what does that even look like for ourselves individually as parents? Most of us, most of the folks in this group are moms.
Uh-huh.
We do have a fair number of dads as well, and many single dads, but we also have other folks who are, the aunts, the uncles, the
Mhm.
grandparents, or the support crew, as it were,
Right.
around the family. So for any of us in those roles, what do you mean by learn to lead yourself first?
Well, I think first you have to really have a vision of what kind of parent you want to be, what kind of aunt, uncle, like what I'm a big like vision person. And I really
Mhm.
truly believe I'm a believer. So it's like without vision, you shall perish. And I truly believe that because if you have no compass to guide you of what kind of parent you want to be, then you're just kind of like happenstance, like just kind of going through the motions. And I don't feel like that is the best way of parenting. If you can envision what kind of or even what kind of relationship you want to have with your kids. Some parents are like, I'm good with being like the authoritarian and they just listen to me and that's, all in good. Like, that's what I want. For me, I have 5 daughters. So for me to cultivate a relationship, especially now, because I have all ages from 1 to 14. So, like, even when they're young, how can I cultivate that? So when they are teenagers, yes, are they going to pull away from me? Of course, they're supposed to. They're
Sure.
independent. They're growing up, right? Like as hard as
Sure.
it is for me as a mom, that's what I want. I want them to be independent, have their own lives, but I still want them to come to me for guidance, for wisdom when they're really struggling, when the trauma does happen. How can I help
Sure.
them develop those emotions? If I don't make that a safe space when they're young,
Mhm.
then why would I expect them to do that when they're old or when they have kids or beyond that, right? So first I think it's like what kind of relationship do you really want to have with your kids long term? Right? Not just right now in the because we're in toddler stage too, and it's a lot of tantrums and those type of
Mhm.
things. But looking beyond that. So, and if you're an aunt or uncle, or I mean, especially dads in this, what kind of relationship do you want to have
Mhm.
with your kids, especially if you're not present as much as you'd like because you're providing for them? So
Right.
first it's like, what kind of relationship do you want to have? For my girls, I want to cultivate a relationship, but I'm not their best friend. That's not my role. Yes,
Mhm,
I want them to be able to come to me. Yes, I want them to be open and completely vulnerable with me, but I'm not their girlfriend. That's for
mhm.
another role. I am their mom. And so establishing that and what that means to you, and all cultures are different and everybody has what that looks like. So I think
Sure.
just establishing that and just make it simple. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be like this profound thing. Like, how do you want when your kids are older? Like, do you want to, have a relationship with them? Okay.
Right.
So I think that's first. And then I ask myself, well, who do I need to be or become in order for that to happen? If I want to be a more patient, kind, loving mom, what needs
Mm.
to happen? Well, I can't, bite their heads off when they spill the milk. And I can't, question every minute of the day if they didn't do something that I specifically told, like, and I kind of break that down. So it's like every time a parenting moment comes, especially when maybe I don't respond in the right way, I ask
Mhm,
myself, is this the kind of mom, the identity of what I want as a mom? Is this who I really am? And that goes to the vision, the identity of what kind of mom I am. And if
mhm,
it's not, then I need to be like, okay, what's happening? Am I way
mhm.
stressed out? Am I not having enough quiet time? Am I not nutrition, fitness, like all of those things? Like what's in the gap, as I like to call it, that I'm not become like having that because we're all gonna have moments like we're
Right.
human. And so I'm going to
Mhm,
lose my temper. I'm going to be short with this. And, when bills are due or things are lining up, so I ask myself that. So it's aligning that with that identity of when those things happen and also self awareness of when that happens,
mhm.
looking at myself and taking ownership. There's a book called Extreme Ownership. I know some women think it's pretty gruff and it's pretty because it's military book. But what I always say with a book is you eat the meat, you spit out the bones. Like you take what is serving you in that book and everything
Right.
else, you just throw it away. Because do I believe in every aspect of that book? No. And do I every aspect of that to parenting? No. But what it really allows you to do is taking ownership of every situation. And you are the parent, you are the leader. Until they are out of your
Mhm,
house, you are leading them. So,
mhm.
as a leader, I believe in taking extreme ownership. So, even if they do something that you told them not to do and it ended badly, yes, I'm also teaching them ownership by me taking, what in that area could I have been a better parent or a better leader in that, even in their rebellion or whatever. And so, take looking in the mirror, what the mirror reflection and saying, what could I have done to change that? And not looking at it like judgment of myself, but
Right,
just this doesn't have to happen again. Okay. So
right.
I'm looking at ownership and then I forgive myself. Okay. I think
Sure,
forgiveness is so overlooked. I forgive myself for, what? I didn't do that. I didn't communicate. I just assumed, or I lost my temper, or I was snippy or sarcastic.
sure.
You I did that. And I don't want to do that again. So again, how can I change that? What was in the gap? Where can I fix that? And then I'm moving on. And if I need to forgive my child for their, wrongdoing, I forgive them. And having that constant practice of forgiveness allows
Mhm.
the grace to happen. And then they see that. I ask my kids when I lose my temper and I know it, I go to them and I say, you know what? I lost my temper and I'm sorry. I don't say, because you did this and this and this, I
Sure,
say, I lost my temper. Do you forgive me? And
sure.
I allow that because I want them to always have the practice of forgiveness and communication and letting them know that, like, I'm not perfect, but you can see my vulnerability. You can see my weakness. The only thing that I might do for them, because their brains aren't fully developed, especially like my 9-year-old, is I might explain why it happened, but not an excuse, and
Right.
allowing them a moment of like, when we get really tired, when mommy gets tired or I'm not eating right, like, I lose my temper. Has that ever happened to you? An explanation so they can understand their feelings because their feelings, they don't understand why they might react like that. So
Sure.
for those things, and we don't over talk it, but I just explain a little bit to so they have an understanding because so many kids don't have an understanding of their feelings, and then they're just
Agreed.
told by other adults, who don't take that time, to sit up, shut down, be quiet. Why are you doing this? Why are you crying? And then they push those feelings down. Well, those
Right.
manifest. we as adults know those manifest at some point in their life. So
Absolutely. And the other side of that is, and this is coming as the daughter of somebody who was very much an
mhm,
authoritarian rather, of, I'm mother's always right, sit
mhm,
down, children should be seen and not heard. It
yep,
was a different day, it was a different time, it was a different approach than you're taking. But the other thing that I think that models is that it's not only educating them and guiding them about like, hey, here's how poor nutrition impacts or poor sleep or poor
yep,
exercise, those things, right?
yep,
But it's also showing them that it's okay to be imperfect.
yes, yes,
Especially if you've got kiddos who have neurodivergence in which perfectionism runs rampant, i.e., ADHD. That's very common in ADHD. They can't forgive themselves, and
yep,
seeing you model that and go, look, I am a human.
yep.
Ergo, I make mistakes. Now, let me ask you this. At what point, if any, do you say, like, okay, so your kid has misbehaved, said, done, whatever, something that you were
Yep,
like, are you absolutely kidding me right now? Right? We're
right.
like, any parent would look at the situation and be like, "Of course I'm gonna get mad about this because my kid just totally misbehaved
Yep,
in XYZ manner," right?
yep,
So there's the aspect of you haven't eaten, you haven't slept, you have your own adult stressors, as it were, right? And then, like, at what point do you address, okay, I lost my cool because ABC, but D is the fact that your behavior was really not acceptable. Like, how does that work in? Because I hear parents in my brain going, okay, great, but at what point do we hold them accountable for their actions, regardless of how much I flew off the handle?
right. Well, and you know what? This is an age thing. I mean, it really is because like my 14-year-old is going to be set to different standards than my 9-year-old.
Sure.
And so, I mean, you do have to look at age as like a factor a little bit. And there's, different studies for different age groups or whatever. But again, here's the thing. I can't control what they do as
Right.
much as I want to. I
Hmm.
can only control what I do. And so for me personally, again, I'm not a licensed therapist. I do have a degree in family and marriage studies, but like that's about as, but for
Sure.
me, what has worked over the years and what I've seen work, because I'm an aunt to over 20, oh my goodness, 32, 37 nieces and nephews. So like,
Hey,
I mean,
girl.
yeah. So I mean, I have seen like I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, we got 22 minutes, around 35-ish or whatever. So I mean, I've seen the things, right? And so we can always judge other people's parenting and like, you should have done this, right? So for me, what I do is I look at this situation and I'll just give you an example from yesterday. My daughters were supposed to help around the house. We usually don't do that on Sundays, but they didn't help on Saturday. So I said, well, guess what? We're going to do it today. And my oldest daughter, we told her to do something. She was supposed to help her dad. And I went and did stuff with the tinies and whatever. And we came back to dinner. I'm like, okay, so did you help your dad? And she's like, well, no, he didn't say it. He didn't tell me. And I said, I told you, you need to go help your dad. You should have went to your dad and did XYZ. And she's
Sure.
just sitting there, whatever. And I said, and my husband's like, I told you to sweep out the garage and this. And she's like, but you didn't tell me exactly what to do. And, so we're doing this back and forth. And here's the thing. I just said to her and I said, here's the thing. I said, don't take the easy way out. In life, you're going to have moments where you can blame somebody else and not having the right directions, not the thing. You knew that you were supposed to help us. So, what you need to do when you know something like that is you need to go to us if you don't have the directions and say, what do I need to do?
Yep.
But kids are going to take the easy way out. As humans, we
Sure.
take the easy way out. It is biological. Easy means preserve energy, right? And so my
Right.
daughter's no different than that. Am I going to berate her for that? No. Is it easier for her to go downstairs and like hang out in her room? Yes. But it was a teachable moment. I said, this is what you need to do. And for next time. Now, when the next time comes, if it happens, there's going to be more consequences. And she had consequences for her behavior. And I think that's the thing. It's like having those consequences, following through on those consequences. And then it
Hmm.
happens again. You have more consequences and you follow through on those consequences. But one thing that I read the other day was somebody said a parenting from their mom to their dad. It was their mom told them what to do. Like, you have to do this. And their
Sure.
dad told them why they needed to do it. And
Ah,
they received it better in the why, because it, first of all, it anchored in the brain. And so, like, in that moment with my daughter, I could have, berated her all day long. And
mhm,
I did tell her, I mean, I'm a very strong personality. So she knew that she was in trouble. Like, she was like,
sure,
but I said, don't, the one thing I said is don't take the easy way out, because if that's all she got from the conversation, once that comes up in school or in life
mhm,
where she doesn't get the right directions, if she can just hear my voice of saying, don't take the easy way out,
right,
then that's fine. Because everything else, her sweeping out the garage, not sweeping out the garage, like doing the chore, not doing the chore, that's kind of irrelevant. That's the character building. It's that one thing of, like, in life, you're going to have this moment. Okay. Now, my 9-year-old, I'm not going to probably put it to that moment. It's going to be more like, like when you help mom and you like to help mom, it brings you joy, because then we get to play and we get to go jump on the trampoline, because then I don't have
mhm,
to do those things. That's why I ask you to do those. And then she's like, yeah, because she likes to jump on the trampoline. My
sure,
14-year-old, I'm not going to say when we get to sit down and talk together and be together, she's like, I don't want to do those things. And so I do think it's the age. We have to keep them accountable, and we do that by keeping ourselves accountable and then following through on the consequences. I really,
sure,
really try not to have consequences that I can't follow through on. Like,
right,
I won't say, like, you're going to be grounded for a month if I know that I can't follow through on that. If she knows, if I say you lose your phone, she's going to
mhm,
lose her phone. I'm not going to cave. There's going to be no, it's gone. And
mhm,
so that is a line where I think that helps them, the consequences. And then I'm a big believer too. And when they do follow through, then you reward them, even for behavior that they're expected to have.
sure,
Expectations are all perception. And
mhm,
so when kids get even verbal praise from doing something that even they're expected to do, and that
mhm,
this goes for leadership across the board, whether it's in the job title or not, you should be praising your employees. You should be praising your kids. My kids help out with the tiny babies. And some parents would say, well, that's they're supposed to, they're siblings. You know what? I still tell them all the time. I'm like, thank you so much for your help. Thank you for doing your chores on time. Thank you for unloading the dishwasher. It
well,
works.
and what I'm hearing as well, like, I do this with my husband, I it's not praise, it's not like, "Oh, you took out the trash, what a fantastic
No,
job,"
no.
right? It's
You
not
don't
like that, it's like
placate them. Yeah, you don't
right,
placate them.
but gratitude, "Hey, thanks, I appreciate that, you made my life easier,"
Yes,
because I
absolutely.
also appreciate hearing it. I did some extra cleaning yesterday, and I just in passing made a comment to my husband about, oh yeah, I really made sure to do XYZ because it was bothering me. Not that he really gave two hoots about it, but I said because it was bothering me,
Yep.
and he was like, yeah, I noticed that. Thanks, babe. I appreciate it. Like that, it just makes you feel good, and the better. To your
Yes.
point at the beginning, leadership is about how we make them feel
Yep.
and that ties into another point that I know that you had made about leadership is about enrolling, not demanding. So let's
Yes.
wrap up on that point before we go to part 2 with Parent Tween Village.
Yeah. So, when you demand things, and it's like an expectation perception type thing, say for instance, chores, that's like a big one, right?
Mhm.
And I'm still imperfect on this, okay? But the concept is good no matter how, if you're perfect or imperfect on it, okay? So when you're demanding something like, you need to do this, like you must do this, you have to do this, and you're, grinding on them. And that was probably where I yesterday failed to enroll my daughter to do the thing. Like, honestly,
Mhm.
that's where I had to look at myself and say I wasn't enrolling. Again, it's like with my daughter, I enroll her. You know how you want to help, like, and I preface to that because she really does have a giving heart. I think as all humans, we really do have like to give. So when you preface that, like, how when you do help and it makes you feel good, and then mommy gets to do this, that's enrolling her because she gets what she wants at the end of it. She might
Mhm.
not like the chore, but at the end of the chore, that's what she likes. Or, when you do this and then you get a popsicle, or when you do this and it makes your sister laugh and that makes you feel really good. That's why we do those things. You enroll
Mhm.
them with how it makes them feel or what they're going to
Mhm.
get benefit after. And some of
Sure.
it, as they get older and things that they don't want to do, they're like, I don't like that. Like, that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that's where you as a parent, that's where the wisdom comes in. And you say, you know what? I know you don't like to sweep out the garage or do manual labor or whatever, but it's going to build your character. And I
Mhm.
know right now that seems like not fun, but I promise you, these things are going to build things to make a life that you want. Like my daughters love to travel. I'm like, if you want to travel, that takes money. How do you make money? You have to have a good work ethic. This is how you build a good work ethic. And
Mhm.
it's again, it's having that relationship with them that makes them feel like vulnerable and open. Again, they might roll their eyes and they're not always going to get it at the time, but that doesn't mean that we don't get to share it with them and tell them
Right.
that, you know. And again, I'm a big story fan. So like I tell kids stories like of me, of like when I did stuff or failed to do stuff and then things didn't happen. You know,
Mhm.
share those stories with your kids. Be like, you know, for me, I did XYZ and this happened and it was great, or I didn't do XYZ and guess what, somebody else did it and that sucked. And they're going to
Right.
get it, they're going to be like, oh, okay. Again, it humanizes you, and it stories
Mhm.
just, they compel more than facts. Like that's just the truth.
Sure.
And so
Uh,
when you can get to that level, but it's enrolling anybody, anything, it's like give them what they want, show them by doing this is what they're going to want. And
mhm.
inevitably, and I know there's definitely contradictions like in the parenting world about, you know, like bribing or rewards or whatever. But whatever your stance on, we're human beings. You can go against human nature and your parenting will be like this. Or
Yep.
you can go with human nature and guide them and allow it to happen and be alongside them and make sure those like bribes and rewards are beneficial, not just like superficial. And I think
Mm,
that's the difference, beneficial over superficial. When you make that, that's where the beautiful connection comes in.
absolutely. That's awesome. All right, we are going to round out this portion of our conversation about how leadership starts with us as the adults,
Yes.
as we're guiding the next generation, as it were. And we are now going to pop over into Parent Tween Village for a conversation exclusively for our members there, where
Okay.
we're going to be talking about how leadership isn't about you, but we're going to be talking about servanthood in leadership. And so I'm intrigued to see where this goes. For anyone who's tuning in, if you're not yet a member of Parent Tween Village, there's information in our Facebook group about how to do that. It's $7 a month for the first year for some really top notch insight from folks like Tabatha. So, Tabatha, I'm going to say thank you for part one, and
Thank
I
you.
will see you momentarily
All
in
right.
part two. So, just stand by. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Have a great one, everybody.